Imagine standing at the corner of a Roman street just after dawn. The first thing that reaches you, before the noise of vendors, before the sight of marble temples catching sunlight, is the smell. Warm animal dung from the bakery's mule, circling its stone mill since before sunrise. The sharp tang of stale urine, cooled in terracotta jars outside the fuller's workshop. Wood smoke, acrid and gray, seeping from every doorway. And beneath it all, the heavy, fermented sweetness of garum, fish sauce, simmering in the thermopolium 2 doors down. This is Rome, not the Rome of marble and triumph, but the Rome your nose would have known. The air is thick, humid from bodies and fires, coating the throat. This is the reality that existed beneath the grandeur. The same Romans who built the Pantheon walked these streets without complaint. Consider this. What does that tell us about how they experienced their world? Quick note. This content is educational only, based on archaeological evidence and ancient historical sources. Let us examine the scale of the problem. At its peak, Rome held roughly 1 million people, the densest city in the pre-industrial world. Every forum, every alley, every apartment block pressed with humanity. And where there are people, there is waste. The cloaca. Maxima existed. Yes, Rome's great sewer. Strabo, the geographer, noted it was wide enough that hay wagons could drive through it in places. But here's what matters. Most homes weren't connected to it. The engineering required to safely trap sewer gases didn't exist yet. No siphon traps meant methane could flow backward into homes. A single lamp flame near the wrong drain could spark disaster. So most Romans lived without direct sewer connections. Public latrines served. The forums, street-level urinals dotted busy corners. But waste still flowed through the streets. If you've walked through Pompeii, you've seen the evidence. Those raised stepping stones crossing every intersection. They weren't decorative. They were necessary. The aediles, Rome's urban officials, were tasked with preventing foul smells in public spaces. The very existence of this duty tells us something important. The Romans noticed. They cared. But their solutions were limited. Consider this. The very infrastructure we admire, the aqueducts, the public baths, may have made the smell problem worse. More water meant more waste. That waste cascaded through streets without modern drainage. Progress and pollution arrived together. It seems that the Cloaca Maxima was more civic propaganda than universal. Solution: a monument to engineering that served temples and forums. Meanwhile, it left insulae, the apartment blocks, where most Romans lived, to their own devices. Now, let us examine the sources of these smells with precision. Begin with the Fulanicae, the fuller's workshops. These were the laundries of ancient Rome, where togas were cleaned and wool was processed, and they relied on urine. Enormous quantities of urine. The chemistry was simple, though the Romans didn't understand it in molecular terms. Stale urine breaks down into ammonia. Ammonia dissolves the lanolin that makes wool greasy and unwearable. It was the most effective cleaning agent available. Public jars collected urine at street corners. Sometimes pipes carried it directly from latrines to workshop basements. At Ostia, the port city, we can still see evidence of this system. A pipe runs from the baths of Mithras down into a Phalonica below. The system was intentional, deliberate, and the urine wasn't used fresh. It was left to age. Stale urine had higher ammonia concentration, more potent, more effective, also more pungent. Sulfur was added to bleach the fabric. Rotten egg smell mixed with ammonia. The excavated Phalonica at Pompeii had its processing vats in the back of the structure, away from the street entrance. Even the Romans preferred not to greet customers with that particular combination. What's Remarkable is that the Romans understood urine was valuable precisely because it smelled terrible. The ammonia that made fuller's workshops unbearable was the very agent that cleaned senatorial togas. Function and offense were inseparable. The texture of it, wool soaked in stale urine, slick and heavy, the sound of it sloshing in stone vats. A sulfur, smoke sharp enough to burn the nostrils. This was daily reality in a Roman commercial district. Move now to the markets. To food, no refrigeration existed except occasional mountain ice, and only in winter. Fish, shellfish, meat, all sat in. Open air. Flies gathered. Rancidity set in quickly under the Mediterranean sun. Archaeological reconstructions of Rome. Markets emphasize this point. The smell would have been immediate, unavoidable. And then there's garum, fermented fish. Sauce, as ubiquitous in Roman cooking as salt is today. Made from fish guts, fish blood, and salt, left to ferment for months. The resulting liquid was strained and sold. The smell was powerful, pungent, sweet, and rotten at once. In the year 2020, archaeologists excavated a thermopolium in Pompeii, a fast food counter, essentially. When they removed volcanic ash from one of the wine storage jars embedded in the counter, something remarkable happened. Excavator Teresa Virtuoso reported a very strong aroma of wine was released, so potent they could smell it even through their protective masks. 2,000 years later, the scent's still there, trapped in porous clay. Bean paste for flavoring, crushed fava beans mixed into wine, olive oil heated and reheated in the same vessels, all of it concentrated in small, enclosed street-side kitchens with minimal ventilation. The thermopolium was an olfactory assault. Now, consider the human body itself. Romans bathed, yes. Bath culture was central to social life, but they didn't use soap as we understand it. Olive oil was applied to the skin, then scraped off with metal tools called strigils. The oil took dirt with it, some dirt, but body odor remained. Pliny the Elder, writing in his Natural History, records remedies for body odor. Ashes of goat's horns mixed with oil of myrtle, rubbed all over the body. He also mentions alumine and mineral, salt similar to modern antiperspirant ingredients. It was placed in the armpits until the odor disappeared. The fact that Pliny records these remedies tells us two things. Romans experienced body odor, and they judged it. Wood smoke filled the insulae. Apartment buildings had no chimneys. Cooking fires, oil lamps, braziers for heat, all vented into shared stairwells or out through windows. The smoke clung to fabric, to hair, to walls. Cremation grounds lay just outside the city walls. When the wind shifted, the smell carried inward. The scent of burning flesh mixed with incense and oils. Romans would have recognized it immediately. Perfumes existed, oils infused with rose, cinnamon, frankincense. But these were masks, not replacements. Heavy and oily, made with animal fats, meant to overpower other smells rather than subtly complement them. Glass perfume bottles are common archaeological finds after the 1st century before the Common Era. That's when glass-blowing techniques arrived. But chemical analysis of residues shows scent profiles alien to modern noses. Patchouli was recently identified in one Roman flask. Dense, earthy, overwhelming. Let me address a common misconception. The popular image shows Romans luxuriating in pristine marble baths, emerging rose-scented. But the evidence suggests something closer to a gym locker room. Olive oil, sweat, the sharp mineral tang of heated water, all enclosed in stone with limited air circulation. Bath water was shared. Dozens, sometimes hundreds, of bodies used the same pools throughout the day. Scraping tools cleaned individual skin, but they did nothing for the communal water. The caldorium, the hot room, would have been especially close. Steam carrying the accumulated scent of everyone who'd entered that day. Perfumes weren't like modern fragrances either. No alcohol base meant no quick evaporation. Instead, thick oil sat on skin for hours. The scents were designed to announce presence from a distance. Subtlety wasn't the goal. Domination of the olfactory space was. And not everyone smelled equally. We might imagine that class distinctions in Rome were as much olfactory as visual. The space between patrician and plebeian measured not in marble, but in the absence or presence of the street's smells clinging to one's toga. Elites had private latrines. Enslaved people carried chamber pots away from living quarters. The wealthy had access to expensive perfumes and oils. They lived on ground, floors of insulae, or in separate villas entirely, away from the cooking smoke and human density of upper stories. The poor lived 5, 6 stories up, closest to the cooking fires, farthest from running water. Every smell of the street below drifted upward and stayed. Martial, the satirical poet writing in the 1st century of the Common Era, captures this anxiety in his work. In one epigram, he describes a woman named Thais. After drinking Vatican wine, he says she smells worse than an old jar from a fuller, just broken in the middle of the street. Worse than a goat after an amorous encounter. Worse than the belch of a lion. Worse than a hide torn from a dog on the banks of the Tiber. This is hyperbole, certainly, satirical exaggeration, but it reveals something. Romans had an extensive vocabulary for bad smells, and they used those smells to pass moral judgment. To smell wrong was to be wrong, socially, morally, completely. So what remains of this olfactory Rome? Walk through Pompeii today, and you'll still see the placement of urine collection jars, the layout of Phoeniciae with their vats and channels, the stepping stones crossing streets that once flowed with waste, the thermopolia with their embedded storage jars. Molecular archaeology continues to detect ancient scents, that 2020 thermopolian wine, other residues in amphorae, traces of garum in shipwrecks. Chemistry endures even when the experience doesn't. There's a parallel here. Industrial cities of the 1850s. London's Thames declared biologically dead. Modern tanneries in developing nations. Humans build tolerance through necessity. What seems unbearable to outsiders becomes invisible to residents. Olfactory adaptation is well documented in neuroscience. Did Romans smell their city the way we would? Or did habituation render it neutral? Background noise, rather than assault? The evidence suggests they noticed. Martial's epigrams, Pliny's remedies, the aediles' official duties. They weren't unaware, but they accepted it as the cost of urban density, of civilization itself. The smell was the price of the city. Here's what this tells us. The marble facades were aspiration. The daily smell was reality. The gap between those two things, that's the human condition. Not unique to Rome, universal. We build monuments to transcend our circumstances, but we still live in those circumstances. The contradiction doesn't diminish the achievement. It makes it more remarkable. The Pantheon still stands. So do the stepping stones. Stand again at that street corner. Dawn, light catching the tops of insulae. The donkey circles its mill. Urine ripens in terracotta jars. Fish sauce simmers. And somewhere, in a villa on the Palatine Hill, incense burns to cover it all. The Rome of marble was a dream built atop. The Rome of smells. A dream its people clung to, even as their noses told them otherwise. Perhaps that's the most Roman thing of all. Not the temples they built, but the contradiction they lived. The grandeur and the grime, inseparable. Both real, both true, both Rome.